Payroll for your nonprofit. Oh, your head's hurting already, isn't it? But it's an important topic you've got questions about, and so today we're going to battle through the pain and explore what it looks like to pay people in your nonprofit. Hi, I'm Greg McRae, founder and CEO of Foundation Group, and welcome back to our 501c3 University channel, where we strive to make nonprofit issues understandable. So, you need to pay some people, eh? Well, maybe you've run your nonprofit solely on volunteer energy for a while now, and you really need some paid helpers. Or maybe you're one of those who are starting a nonprofit that will need to pay some people right out of the gate. Well, whichever it is, let's dive in. Payroll for nonprofits is a pretty complex issue. And most of the same rules that apply to for-profit businesses, well, they apply to nonprofits. But some are different, and if that isn't complicated enough, many nonprofits seem bound and determined to create their own rules and exceptions that are categorically incorrect and destined to get them in hot water with the IRS and or their state. Now, there's three primary principles to always keep in mind when dealing with nonprofit payroll, and we're going to get into all three. They are, number one, compensation must be reasonable. Number two, due diligence must be performed. And three, all decisions must be made at arm's length. One thing I want to cover really quick before we get into each of those is the question of employee versus contractor. And we've covered this topic at length a while back, and we'll link that video below. This is a biggie, and we deal with this question from clients on a weekly basis. And that is, should I pay my staffers as employees or as independent contractors? Well, 95% of the time, the answer is going to be as employees. Why? Chances are you, the employer, have control over how the worker does their job. Chances are pretty good, too, that you control how much you're paying them, and they cannot take a financial loss by working for you, say, by underbidding the job like a contractor might. And finally, do they have benefits like PTO, insurance, etc.? Like I said, we've covered this extensively, so go check it out. Okay, on to our three principles. First up is reasonable compensation. Now, the IRS requires the pay of nonprofit employees from the lowest level worker to the highest paid executive to be reasonable. But what does that even mean? This is a classic example of where the IRS makes a rule, then does a terrible job of defining what it means. They don't draw any bright lines, but kind of expect you to subjectively figure it out. This is your lucky day, and I'm going to help define it for you. This concept of reasonableness basically means that you can justify the rate of compensation you're paying someone. In other words, it isn't excessive because it matches well with the job description and the skill set that the employee has. How do you know it matches well? Well, because you, or preferably your board or compensation committee, has researched comparable positions in comparable organizations in a comparable geographic area. Is that enough comparables for you? One question I've been asked before is how some of these big nonprofits like, say, the Red Cross or even universities pay these huge salaries to their key people. I mean, have you checked out the pay compensation for SEC football coaches lately? How is a $10 million salary reasonable? The answer again is comparability. The IRS doesn't necessarily limit the amount, it's the expectation that it is comparable and justifiable given the overall landscape for that role. So you might have guessed that we've already sort of jumped into number two, and that's due diligence. This goes back to what I've said on many videos before. Document, document, document. In the very unlikely event that the IRS ever challenged the reasonableness of anybody's pay on your team, you'll have the documentation you need to support the pay package you're giving that person. So where do you come up with this stuff? Well, there's several places you can start. Number one, job boards. What's the going rate for similar positions in your area right now? Jump on Indeed or ZipRecruiter and look around. And don't think you only have to benchmark other nonprofits. You're in competition for the same potential candidates, so don't limit your comparables. Number two is the IRS. Now, this one may be harder to find information on non-executive team members, but for executive staff, you can go to www.irs.gov/EO and look at any nonprofit's Form 990 filing. The pay packages for executives are public information and often found on the Form 990. This is a good source of due diligence if you're specifically looking at nonprofit compensation. And finally, the Department of Labor publishes numbers annually about such things. You'd be surprised what a simple Google search could turn up. Our third principle is arm's length decision making. So what exactly does that mean? Arm's length decision making when it comes to paying employees means that people with a conflict of interest aren't directly involved in the compensation decisions. Now, this may be someone who's on the board, but is also going to be an employee. Well, that person cannot come up with their own pay package nor cast a vote concerning that. They need to recuse themselves. Same is true for someone who may be on the board, but the organization is going to hire that person's wife or son. They too would need to recuse themselves. This one really isn't that hard. People just don't like it. Those in leadership with a financial self-interest or who are closely associated with a potential new hire must stay out of the compensation decisions regarding that person. For a better understanding of conflict of interest and how that's a constant theme in your nonprofit, check out our recent video on the topic about 6 policies your organization must have. We're going to link that below. There's much more that can be said about this, but I think this short video gives you the basic idea. If you need to hire staff, remember they are probably not contractors. Their pay needs to be reasonable. You need to research your pay packages and keep related parties out of the decision-making process. Get these things right and you're going to be just fine. That's it for today. Now go serve your community. Hey, do me a favor and don't navigate away just yet. We would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button below, as it really helps get our content recommended to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, as we have great content coming your way on a regular basis. Finally, you can click the little bell icon to be notified of new content when we post it. To learn more about Foundation Group, you can visit us on the web at www.501c3.org. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.